Good morning. Well, it's morning for me anyways. I don't know where you are watching this. Let me get a sip of my coffee here. Excuse me. Okay. So, got another book review here. I just finished reading this. Picked this up from the library. This is I guess is Eyewitness to the Civil War. I don't know what the proper title is. Gettysburg. It's told from the perspective of Lieutenant Frank A. Haskell of the United States of America. So the Union Army. He's fighting with the Grand Army of the Republic under Gibbon. So he's a Wisconsin man fighting with Gibbon, so we're talking about the Iron Brigade. This is an eyewitness account of the Battle of Gettysburg. Frank Haskell, Lieutenant Frank Haskell, died at Cold Harbor in 1864. So this was written relatively shortly after the battle itself. Therefore, I think it's got a lot of I don't know. I think that a lot of these guys, when they write their memoirs, they embellish them. You know, everybody's subject to it. But for instance, let me compare it with the other to show you what I mean. The other eyewitness account in here is Colonel William C. Oates, the Confederate States of America, who fought with the 15th Alabama. He would later go on to become governor of Alabama. So that's what I mean. He wrote his memoir years later. So there's a lot of controversy surrounding Oates's account. For instance, one of the things I learned from reading this, by the way, because they're broken up. The first half of the book, there's a good introduction in here that gives a little background on both of the men. And then it kind of tells their story, kind of talks about some of the controversy surrounding them, and then it gets into the actual account. Now, both of these men, they were not present for the first day of Gettysburg. So Gettysburg was fought over the course of 3 days in July of 1863. Excuse me. And neither one of these men saw action until the second day. So July 2nd. In Colonel, and that's even controversial. Is he really a colonel? I mean, there's controversy surrounding his rank. I'll call him acting colonel, William Oates. Okay, he wakes up early on July 2nd, around 3 a.m., and they begin to march towards Gettysburg. They march 28 miles in 11 hours. That is really incredible. By the time they get to Gettysburg, they essentially go straight into action. They get there after having marched all day in July. Okay, 11 miles. They get to the battlefield and they're told, you got to go take Little Round Top. And of course, Joshua Chamberlain and the 20th Maine are up there. Gives you a little bit of, perspective for these guys that are marching up through all that fire, who have just marched all day long. They had their canteen. Their canteens got captured, essentially. They sent a detachment of guys off to fill their canteens with water. And those guys ended up being captured. So all these men in the 15th Alabama that are going up here, they don't have any water. They're exhausted. They are dehydrated. Some of them are passing out from the heat, just from pure exhaustion. So the fact that they were able to mount any kind of offense at all is very admirable. Marching into fire like that. The controversy surrounds Oates and Chamberlain. I guess they had beef with each other for years afterwards concerning the events that took place there. Evidently, Oates claims that it wasn't Chamberlain's bayonet charge that drove them off, but that he had ordered the retreat. I suppose that it's possible. Maybe he sounded the retreat simultaneously. I don't know. I think he's just trying to save face. I don't put too much stock in it. But what I mean by the embellishment of personal memoirs is that, according to Colonel Oates here, he believes that the battle for Round Top was the the entire Civil War staked on that moment. Had he and his men been able to pierce the lines and drive off Chamberlain, the whole Union flank would have collapsed and they would have won Gettysburg and the whole war would have been won in that moment. So, I mean, they really blow up their own importance. One of the things that Oates is critical of, he's critical of James Longstreet. Okay, he says that he dilly-dallied. He has a list of grievances that are actually recorded here towards the end of his chapter. Let me pause it. Okay, so he's a little critical of Stuart, yet he defends Stuart against Longstreet's attacks. One of the things, he's got a lot of beef with James Longstreet. Number one, here's his list of grievances. Had Stuart been less enthusiastic and not gone so far east and kept between the two armies, Lee would have been more fully advised of every movement of his adversary and would have been better able to anticipate him, selected his battleground, and have the cavalry fresh and in good play in the battle and protecting his communications. Number two, he says, had General Ewell followed up the success of the first day and have driven the broken and defeated corps beyond the strong position of Cemetery Ridge that evening, or if he had occupied Culp's Hill before the Union troops did, which was easy enough done at any time until occupied by the 12th Corps after 9 p.m., no further fighting would have occurred at Gettysburg. General Lee ordered him to occupy Culp's Hill. Now that's controversial. Okay, did he? He said, if practicable. That is a controversy that remains to this day. He says, but it could not be done till after the 12th Corps arrived. He said, number three, had Longstreet's attack on the second day been made early in the forenoon when there were no Federal troops on the Round Tops, instead of at 3:30 in the afternoon, he would easily have captured both mountain tops, the key point of the entire Federal position, and Lee would have had the victory. Now, again, we don't know if Lee would have had the victory or not, but his chances probably would have increased quite a bit. Contention number four. He says, if the 48th Alabama had not been transferred to the left, but had been remained to protect the rear, it would have taken care of the sharpshooters. Colonel Oates' flanking column would have captured Little Round Top before Vincent's brigade arrived, and it would have won the battle for the Confederates. So again, he's staking his own significance. He's like, we would have taken it. We would have taken that hill. Contention number five. He says, Colonel Oates' two regiments reached the top of Great Round Top, had they been reinforced with artillery, it would have commanded Little Round Top, part of Cemetery Ridge, which would have been untenable and have enabled the Confederates to win the field. I'm not going to go through all points. He's got 12 points of contention here, okay, listed. All things that he says these would have, any one of these 12 points was a lost opportunity that if it would have been capitalized upon, the whole course of Gettysburg and the war itself would have been reversed. Now, he doesn't have a lot of nice things to say about James Longstreet. So, James Longstreet, controversial figure. Excuse me again. Get my coffee. Now, shifting to the other account listed in this book of Lieutenant Frank Haskell. I tend to believe Frank Haskell a little bit more and take some of what he says more at face value, simply for the fact that he was not a politician. He didn't have political aspirations. In fact, he's very critical of old Dan Sickles. He don't like Dan Sickles at all. And if you know anything about Dan Sickles, he is a very controversial figure. He's kind of, like Longstreet for the South, Dan Sickles for the Union. Gets a lot of haterade. All right, so let me read you a little bit about what Lieutenant Haskell has to say about some of the actions of Dan Sickles. He says here, okay, so again, Haskell doesn't get to the battle or get involved in the battle until the second day, just like our buddy here, Colonel Oates, okay, in the 15th Alabama. The Iron Brigade doesn't see action till day number 2. Now he's sitting here up watching this. He says somewhere at 1 o'clock, this would be on July 2nd, the skirmishing fire had nearly ceased, and a movement of the Third Corps occurred, which I shall describe. I cannot conjecture the reason of this movement. From the position of the Third Corps, as I have mentioned, to the second ridge west, the distance is about 1,000 yards, and there the Emmitsburg Road runs near the crest of the ridge. General Sickles commenced to advance his whole corps from the general line straight to the front. So he moves his men up into the peach orchard, right? He says it was not ordered. He said, okay, so he says what the purpose could have been is past conjecture. It was not ordered by General Meade, as I heard him say, and he disapproved of it as soon as it was made known to him. Generals Hancock and Gibbon, as they saw the move in progress, criticized its propriety sharply, as I know, and foretold quite accurately what would be the result. I suppose the truth probably is that General Sickles supposed he was doing for the best, but he was neither born nor bred a soldier, but one can scarcely tell what may have been his motives of such a man. A politician, and some other things, exclusive of the Barton Key affair, a man after show and notoriety and newspaper fame, and the adulation of the mob. Oh, there is a grave responsibility on those in whose hands are the lives of 10,000 men, and on those who put stars upon men's shoulders too. Bah! I kindle when I see some things that I have to see. But this move of the Third Corps was an important one. It developed the battle. The results of the move to the Corps itself we shall see. Oh, if this corps kept its strong position upon the crest, and supported by the rest of the army, had waited for the attack of the enemy. So he's going to be critical of Dan Sickles. He goes on to say there's a whole description of the problem that this move causes, the hole that it makes in the line that has to be plugged. Meade has to bring in his reserves. Towards the end of the book, or the end of Haskell's account, again, he's going to be critical of Dan Sickles. Let's see, I'll find this spot. Okay, so on page 239, this is what he has to say. A good generalship is claimed for General Meade in this battle. So was the conduct of his subordinate commanders good. I know, and have heard of no bad conduct or blundering on the part of any officer, save that of Sickles on the 2nd of July, and that was so gross, and came so near being the cause of irreparable disaster, that I cannot discuss it with moderation. I hope this man may never return to the Army of the Potomac or elsewhere to a position where his incapacity, or something worse, may be the fruitless destruction to thousands again. The conduct of the officers and men was good. The 11th Corps behaved badly, but I have yet to learn the occasion when, in the opinion of any save their own officers and themselves, the men of this corps have behaved well on march before the enemy under either Sigel or other commander. With this exception, in some minor cases of very little consequence, in general result, our troops, whenever and wherever the enemy came, stood against their storms of impassable fire. Such was the infantry, such the artillery. The cavalry did less, but it did all that was required. And then he goes on to praise the valor and determination of Lee's army and the men that they fought against. But as you can see, Dan Sickles, and I am, listen, here's the thing. We have this hindsight, okay, of modern academics and people that want to look back on the past and think that they know better than the men that were involved. The arrogance of modern man to think, oh, we have so much more learned research and we know much more. Listen, the men on the battle that fought the battle, okay, they were there. We weren't. If Lieutenant Haskell's assessment is that Dan Sickles was a man that was looking for political ambition and that he acted on his own authority, the man should have been court-martialed. All right? He acted on his own authority and he nearly caused a disaster. Okay? So, but he got the Medal of Honor. Anyways, I just want to say this was a great read. It really gives you some insight into the men on both sides that fought in this battle. And got this from a public library. I'm going to take it back, read something else. I blasted through this. I'm slowly making my way through Volume 2 of Shelby Foote's Civil War trilogy. I'm just really in a Civil War mood right now. I don't know what it is. I'm just reading everything I can get my hands on for the moment. I'll pass through this phase. For a while I was into King Arthur stuff and was reading all this Arthurian legend. So I'll probably burn myself out on this like I do everything. Put it down and then maybe a couple years from now come back to it. But for right now I'm just really into it. So thank you for watching. I'm going to go get me something else from the library. I'm going to continue to read on that, and I'll have further updates on books that I've read. I would highly recommend this, though. This was really good. So there it is. Here's what the book looks like. I can give you the ISBN number here. So if you want to check this out, you can get it. So the ISBN number is 0-553-29832-1. Copyright 1992. This was a Bantam book. So if you want to check that out, you can go to your library, give them the ISBN number, and they can give it to you. Or you can screenshot it right there. There it is. Right there's the ISBN number. All right. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day.